Straight facts, and we back. You already know I'm Dre, and I got a real special guest today. I got advocate, activist, mentor, and mental health expert, Dr. Alexander.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for that lovely intro.
Oh, I forgot educator too. 'Cause she educates on everything, life,
I try.
just everything. So, how are you doing today?
I'm chilling. It's International Women's Day. You know, I feel it.
It is. It is. And International Women's Month too.
It is Women's History Month,
Oh yeah, yeah. It's
and
Women's
then
History
it's
Month.
it's like the trifecta for me: February, March, and April. Because February is Black History Month.
Yeah.
March is Women's History Month, and then April, and I call April 8th. That's my birthday, the high holy day.
Oh, you an
is Black
Aries.
Women's History Month. So April is the month, Black Women's History Month.
So
Yes,
you an
I
Aries.
definitely
Them
am.
Aries are something else. I
Ram.
tell you. Whew, they something else. So, first and foremost, I just want you to give a background of who you are, where you grew up at, and how was your upbringing.
Well, I started off life in the Hill District of Pittsburgh. Um, I was born to a single mom, a white mom, have a black dad who I've only seen once in my life.
Okay.
So I don't really know him, but he did give me the greatest part of me, which is my blackness, so
Hmm.
I can't be mad at him. Moved to Wilkinsburg early on, and that's where I spent most of my childhood. Well, actually, all of my childhood. I think I moved when I was 18, um, out east to the suburbs. But Wilkinsburg, where I grew up, um, I attended California University of Pennsylvania
Cal
for
U.
my bachelor's degree, which is now Penn West.
It is. Yeah.
hmm
I went to Clarion.
Okay. Um, I went to Duquesne for my master's degree, and I got a master's degree in education, got a school counseling certification for K through 12, actually.
Oh,
And then
okay.
I got my PhD in counseling and supervision from Duquesne University also. Had almost 30 years in the Penn Hill School District as a classroom teacher. I taught eighth grade U.S. history
Oh, okay.
for about a decade. And then I was an elementary counselor for a few years, which I did enjoy. And them babies just love you no matter what. You can go to work looking like a hot ass mess, and they're like, "Oh, you're so beautiful," and hugging on you and stuff. Just precious babies. But um, it wasn't really my thing. I spent a lot of time crying and worrying about little kids because they can't really do for themselves like the older kids can if
Hmm.
they're in a situation that is, abusive. It was just, it was hard, calling CYF and not knowing if the families was going to be separated or what's going to happen, and the babies are scared. It was hard for me. So a position opened up at the high school. I was at the high school as I was the um, vocational counselor when Penn Hills had their own vocational programs,
Mm.
and there were several of them. And then they ended up just shutting that program down after that year that I was there. Because they didn't have the money to keep up with technology, particularly talking about the auto mechanics, and everything was like kind of converting to chips and different
Right.
types of technology. So I became a regular counselor, and I was there for most of my time in the Penn Hill School District. In the meantime, I also had other jobs, and I worked with adjudicated minors, doing individual and group therapy, psychoeducation groups, things like that. And I also worked at the Mercy Behavioral Walk-in Crisis Center on the South Side.
So you've been doing it all.
I try. I try. So my area of research is generational trauma,
Okay.
particularly as it relates to the Black community. When I started that research, I'll say probably um, 15, 18 years ago, being interested and just kind of, seeing what was out there. There was nothing really out there on Black trauma.
Hmm.
Um, I had to, in my work, use work from survivors and second and third generation writings about survivors of the Jewish Holocaust and also survivors of the Holocaust on indigenous people. I used a lot of that work to kind of supplement my work that wasn't, because there was no research on Black folks. I won't say none, but there was very little.
And you're an activist as well, correct?
Yes, I would say I am. I was the president of the Penn Hills NAACP for a year. Um, I was asked to take that task on, and I did. And I also, volunteer at a few places. I volunteered at the Lincoln Community Center, Lincoln Leamington, where that is,
Mm-hmm.
and now I volunteer at the Free Store in Wilkinsburg, which is again where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I certainly try to promote Black causes and get people activated to participate in government,
Mm-hmm.
because I think it's important. I know a lot of young people don't think that their vote counts, and that's disturbing to me because I think the forces that be want people to think that their vote doesn't count.
Right. So we won't vote in.
Yes,
Yeah.
so we become inactive and disengaged, and that's not an option if we want to be heard and want policies that benefit us and our communities.
Right. Now, what ultimately led you? Was there something maybe you went through growing up, or maybe you seen throughout your life that made you want to be an educator of mental health, and particularly Black people and their mental health?
A lot of things,
No,
you can
that.
imagine.
Yeah.
I'm older, so I've seen a lot of stuff being a little Black girl or mixed biracial. There was a lot of places that I was made to feel uncomfortable. Um, for instance, I think we chatted before about the Kennywood having a pool, did
Mm-hmm.
we? And so Black people weren't allowed in that pool. And there's actually a documentary. I think Mr. Harold Hayes
So
narrated
what's so
it.
what's so what's that all about? Cause.
Well, you know, Black folks wasn't allowed to get in the pools back
Mm-hmm.
in. I was born in the '60s, so even though we like to think it was so long ago that those things occurred, it really wasn't. And so whenever the laws changed and Kennywood was forced, by the way, my little white mama took me into the pool. She's like, "We're going into
Yeah.
this pool. I don't care." So all them white people thought they wasn't swimming with Black people. You were. Um, but so when pressure came, to have to desegregate that pool, and allow Black folks in, Kenny would just shut the pool down, covered it up,
Mm.
and got rid of it. So instances like that, like being disinvited to birthday parties when I was a little girl because their families didn't like Black people or whatever. Um, Seeing the discrepancies in education, um, and I think we note that when we're little, but we can't necessarily put a name or a reason behind it.
Mm-hmm.
But like, why is all the white kids in this reading group and all the Black kids is in the lower reading group? And then when I really, I think I wanted to be the person that I needed when I was a young person to my students. Um, and I hope that I carried that out. I wanted to um, be somebody that they could look up to, that they could trust and believe in, and that they knew was on their side. But yes, when in Penn Hills, I saw a lot of things like just even words the teachers would say when people go into their classes, like at the beginning of school year. Well, if you're not ready to do this and you can't do that, then you probably shouldn't be in this class. Just kind
Mm-hmm.
of like wanting their classes to be kind of the higher achievers or who has historically been the higher achievers, and getting other kids that might be a problem out.
Do you focus more on mental health within the Black community or everyone?
Well, I think it depends on the setting. I think it depends like who I'm serving. Certainly Penn Hills School District had a high number, probably between 73 76% Black student population. So that was significant, but I still had students who were not Black, and
Mm-hmm.
certainly I would serve them. In my consulting company, I serve people of diverse backgrounds, including white people, people that might have been privileged throughout their life who are interested in learning different things about mental health and Black folks and education. I really focus on trauma engaged pedagogy when I'm doing workshops for educators, and how they can kind of make their classrooms and their lessons more student friendly and trauma aware.
Ultimately, why is mental health important to you? Or one, why is mental health important, and why is it particularly important to you?
I think mental health is important, and it's going to be overlapping answers because it affects us human beings in so many ways. And human beings, regardless of what race or religion or gender identity or sexual orientation or age, it affects us all. And I think we saw that as moving through the pandemic. There was like
Mm-hmm.
so much mental health just sitting kind of issues right at the surface, and the pandemic brought a lot of that stuff out, which I think is a good thing because then we can name it and we can treat it, we can address it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because yeah, mental health is just, again, it affects everyone, so it's important to me because I love humanity. um, Mental health for me, i've seen I've seen therapy, I've seen medication, I've seen even acknowledgement that there are issues around our mental health, um, in my students and colleagues and friends, family members, and myself. And so it's important to me that we address it because I think it's gone so long unaddressed. I think we
I
just,
agree.
what happens is that generational trauma that I was talking about, that I try to specialize in and research, do research in, it becomes more embedded in a community, in a family, in an individual, the longer we go without treating it, acknowledging it, and
Mm-hmm.
trying to work through that and heal from it.
When it comes to trauma, well, mental health and trauma within the, in particular, I feel like in the Black community, and why I keep saying that is because I feel like we go through that the most out of any other race.
Hmm.
Um, and a lot of people feel like they have so much trauma and just things going on mentally that they're either afraid or really don't know how to express.
Hmm.
One, would you agree with that, and why do you think that is?
I would agree with it, and I would say that's part of the trauma response. So oftentimes you hear people saying, well, "Why are y'all still talking about slavery? Why is everything about race?" Um, and again, that generational trauma. Let's start, because when I was working on my dissertation, my chairperson, she was like, "You got to narrow this down. You can't like
Yeah.
study the world." Because I was thinking I'm gonna go back to Africa and start there, but we settled on starting here. Black folks being brought over from various any of the 54 African nations, um, to be enslaved, and that stuff that they went through, the things that they experienced, um, they responded because human beings respond to abuse, um, and the way we respond is trying to protect those we love from experiencing that same abuse
Mm-hmm.
and that fear, right? So what happens is, slave masters and overseers, um, mutilate, let's say, black men in front of black women. Um, and so that puts something in black women's beings and spirit to protect their men, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, think about trying to escape slavery, and people had to be quiet about that. You had to
Yeah.
know who you could trust. You had to know who to talk to and who not to talk to, right? And so black folk, that becomes more embedded because it was never treated. It was never even seen as trauma. Who's talking about trauma when you got Jim Crow, when you got the convict leasing system, when you got
Yeah.
institutional racism, when you got, discrimination left, right, and sideways coming at you? You're just trying to survive. So
Right.
it becomes more embedded in who we are, those trauma responses that were actually protective factors back in slavery, like don't talk to, what I mean? Know who to
Yeah.
talk to. Now we're like, oh, I ain't talking to nobody. I don't need to tell nobody my business. And so
Mm-hmm.
now that's a risk factor in our community that we've inherited through the generations. And that's why I see it as important and significant, because we go along like, nah, I'm good. I'm cool. I got this, and
And it's
we,
okay not to be okay.
there it is. But that is in that period of enslavement, that antebellum time, those things are so embedded in the black community and who we are, that it's really difficult for us to come up out of that space to recognize that it's not our fault. It's stuff that's been done to us. There's no shame in it. It doesn't make us weak. Um, And I think that's really hard to overcome, especially in black men, because black men as a whole have been so disrespected and kind of disregarded,
Mm-hmm.
um, and are expected still to carry the load of the family.
Yep.
So yeah, that's why, because it has become a part of our culture,
Yeah.
and we don't even know it. We think it's normal. It's so much a part of us that we think is normal.
Hmm. Now you talked a lot about discrimination and even kind of touched somewhat on racism. You used to work at Penn Hills High School, correct?
I did.
Okay. And how long did you work there?
Forgive me if I'm not exact. I think 17, 18 years.
Okay. So pretty long time,
That's
almost 2 decades. And
a long time.
we had a conversation prior to the show,
Hmm.
and you had basically stated that there was a lot of you had went through a lot of discrimination, racism, and even unfairness. You felt like.
Hmm.
Um, are you able to touch on what you experienced? And because ultimately you said that you quit, correct?
I did.
So can you talk about what you experienced and what led you to quitting
Yes.
in regards to like discrimination and being treated unfairly?
Well, let me say, uh, the reason I left was not because of me and how I was treated.
Hmm.
The reason I left is because I no longer believed in the mission of education in its current state. Um, the system, and not just at Penn Hills, but overall in America, has not changed and adapted and adjusted to current day needs and how we understand the world to work at
Right.
this point, right? They're still living back in, I don't know, whenever public education was created somehow. Um, and even like take for example, they still have 3 months off in the summer. That's really not academically sound according to research.
You think so?
um, yes, and the reason they did that is so the kids could be home to harvest the crops, right? I don't know any kids who harvest crops these days. Maybe some do, but our system should not necessarily be based on life in the 17 or 1800s.
No.
Also, research shows that high school students do better on teacher made and standardized testing if they can come in closer to 8 o'clock rather than 7 o'clock in the morning. Their bodies are growing and changing. They need that little bit of extra sleep. But what do? Push the time they come in back. Like when I started the high school, it was like
I ain't never thought of it
7:30,
like
7:15. Well, that's why I'm here. Seven,
that.
and now it's like 7 o'clock. You gotta, it just doesn't make any sense, and it's for the convenience of the system, right?
Hmm.
And when students come into classrooms or into the building, they're, at least in my space, they were yelled at, screamed out, take your hood down, take your, hat off, and walking through metal detectors, having their bags checked. And what does that sound like to you? Giving up their phones, having to put them in a yonder pouch. Does it sound like school or somewhere you would want to be?
Well, the metal detectors part, I understand.
It sounds like prison. It sounds like you're walking into a place where you have to give up your rights and who you are.
I'm not gonna go that. I'm not gonna go that far. Because I mean, I'm not saying every student is like this, but there are students who do bring weapons. So I understand the whole metal detectors part and the phones part, pushing it.
Having to give up their phone before they walk into the building or as they walk into the building, having
Give it
their,
up or just
yeah,
like
they put it in a yonder pouch. This
when they
is
start doing that.
last school year. Oh, the babies found a way to get beyond that, and I knew they would. So
I ain't know that.
here's
They
the
didn't do
thing.
that when I was in high school.
We right.
How do you feel about like the curriculum or like what's actually being taught? Because I've heard this numerous times that high schools, and this is not just Penn Hills, it's not just Pittsburgh, it's everywhere, where they say there's a lot of key things that we don't learn, and by the time you get 20, 30, you don't know, such as like teaching students about credit, about buying a house, about having specifically a class for sex education. A lot of people just get 25, 30, and their credit's not good because they never were taught, and say their parents weren't taught.
Hmm.
So do you feel like they should change the curriculum and add things like that, like credit, buying a house, um, financial literacy? Do you have an issue with them not teaching that?
Well, we actually at Penn Hills High School did. I don't know what's going on there now, but had a class called financial literacy.
Okay. We did it when I
Now,
was in high school. We didn't.
well, here's the thing: a lot of curriculum is geared towards the state tests, the keystones, the um, PSSAs, and all those things. And so teachers are kind of bullied into, forced into teaching to the test, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think so. A lot of that because what happens is the public then sees these scores. The public wants teachers to be held accountable and schools to be held
Yeah.
accountable. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't be. They absolutely should be. But is that the way to do it? Because testing is a big business. There's a lot of money to be made in testing,
Mm-hmm.
supplying all that stuff. Having people score them and all that stuff. So I think if we could get rid of, and that's the state Department of Education and the federal Department of Education wants the testing um, as a way to measure achievement and growth, etc. Okay, I get that part. However, it's taking time away from those practical things that students should be able to learn. And I, as a school counselor, like we followed them for 4 years, so these relationships are real, um, and powerful. It's a time in these babies' lives when they're trying to figure out who they are.
Right.
They're going through shit. They went through shit that most people would never come to school when they're going through. And I would marvel at them, like, how are you here? And all the things that you've been through. And again, that relationship of over 4 years for most of them afforded me the ability to know more about them because they were brave enough to share things with me. And that's the foundation to me of a good educator, of an advocate, of an activist.
And I agree with everything you're saying, and it seems like you cared a lot about your students, and we're all for the students and just their progression and just helping them be the best that they can be. Now, you had mentioned there was some unfairness and some things you had went through
Mm-hmm.
that ultimately were on you and affected your mental.
Yes.
Are you willing to share some of those things you went through with like your colleagues and the things they were accusing you of and assuming you were doing when all you were trying to do was be there for the students?
Yes. Yes. This started from my very first year. Me being who I am. I know the origins of the national anthem, and it was written by a racist, slave-owning white man. And I did not feel compelled to stand nor honor that in my position, in my space. So I would have the students stand up if they objected, then that's fine. But remember, this is back in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So there was teachers, they had hall duty and stuff like that, and I got called down to the principal's office because I'm not assuming it was a teacher. Went down and said, well, she's not standing for the flag salute and for the national anthem in the morning. When you're in homeroom and you're in middle school, all that. So I got called in the principal's office. I should have known at that point it was going to be a rocky road. But
Yeah.
so that, and then years later, just petty foolishness. Some white female principals. I guess I don't know the origin of why. There was jealousy. There was jealousy about me and relationships with other folks, and they were
Like
just
other
acting
folks,
like their students.
like other colleagues.
I think with students and with their family members.
At least your relationships, they like had an issue with you being close to students.
I would say so.
Okay.
I would say so. And again, nothing inappropriate. Parents also liked and respected me as well. And they knew that I was looking out for their kids, which is why they liked and respected me. You see what I'm saying? There was no mystery about it because our babies are the most important things in this world to us.
Mm-hmm.
And they were entrusting them to us and to me in particular as their school counselor. So, yeah, and it was just petty stuff.
So were they like trying to write you up and get you in
Yes.
trouble and things of that sort?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So like,
and that's my career.
Mhm.
You understand? Like I got a mortgage to pay. I got kids to take care of. I got things that I need to do. So please stop playing with me.
so did you have like, so were other colleagues, they were like coming up with different tactics to try to get you in trouble pretty much?
I don't want to make it sound so sinister.
Yeah.
I think they just ran their mouths and they had their opinions. And Penn Hill is like a large place, but a really small
Small.
community. Right.
Yeah.
People know people. I mean, everybody's related damn near. And so when you say something, it spreads. But I made no secret that I felt like they were unfair to me. And they were just like, they would see me in the hall. So here's what happens: teachers and other school employees like counselors, social workers, psychologists, nurses, we all get evaluated. Now, if you're tenured, which I was at the time, you get evaluated once a year. If you're not tenured, you get evaluated twice a year. So these people were trying to like evaluate me just on things in the hallway. Like, oh, I saw her walking down the hallway with a hat on. Hats were prohibited in the building at the time. So, and they still are, I believe. But I had just come in from outside and it was cold, and you're choosing to, how they evaluate teachers. They go into the classrooms, right? You see the principals when you was younger coming to sit in the back seat and just observing
I never knew
the
they
class.
was doing that.
That's what they're doing. So that's what should happen for a counselor too. You should tell me you're going to evaluate me and tell me what I'm going to be evaluated on. Now, since then, the state has changed the way other people besides teachers, classroom teachers, like are evaluated, like school counselors. So there is a specific rubric and stuff now, but then there wasn't. So they was trying to like just randomly pick out shit that happened here, there, elsewhere, and put it in a list of things that I did wrong or that I had to improve.
And did you say they were like screenshotting your stuff on like social media?
So that came later. That was at the new high school. That was actually just a few years ago. And yes, and actually my last year there, I did get called into the office again for some stuff.
Like the principal's office?
Well, the principal is not the one who I spoke to. It was upper administration. So they came down to the high school or over to the high school in order to have this meeting with me and tell me about my own, again, private Instagram account and things that I should or should not put on there. And here's the thing: y'all don't own me. You can't tell me what the fuck. You can't tell me what to do in my own personal private life. And I might be a little wild or whatever, but you got teachers actually having inappropriate relationships with students.
At the Hills?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And I'm not saying necessarily sexual, because I don't want it to be taken like that.
Were they trying to make it like you were doing that?
No, I don't think they were trying to make it like I was doing that. I think they were just saying that, we want a different image for our educators. And I said, well, tell me where exactly, like in my contract or in the code of ethics, this would affect how I do my job. And so they were saying like, oh, if students saw this, well, first of all, I don't let students follow me when they're still students. Talk to so-and-so down the street, because I know they do. But I didn't let them, and so they couldn't see it. But if they happen to know somebody or whatever, they're saying that it could disrupt the educational process.
But that's not your problem. That's their problem.
Well, but it didn't, and that's the point. And then there's the time whenever, back when Mike Brown was murdered in the streets, and I had a T-shirt that said #MikeBrown, and I wore it on dress down day, and people had an issue with that. But these people, here's the thing: never come to me to my face. They never say anything when they see me. They just want to go tell my bosses, and some people on the school boards. Some black women also, which is hurtful and not cool. But they never want to confront me. What's the problem with wearing Mike Brown? It opened up a lot of space for dialogue for students to be able to share with me their fears and their perspectives on, police brutality and the possibilities that they could, or somebody in their family could be shot down the street like that. It brought a lot of fears and conversation to the surface where they felt they could share with me. It was like almost the exact opposite of what people were saying. Oh, it could cause a riot and kids want to act a fool. And I said to my principal when he came to me, because he was like, wear what you want, I don't care, but I have to do this because my boss told me to talk to you about it.
Right.
And I said, well, you've talked to me, and I'll be wearing another one, a different color next week.
Did you feel overwhelmed with like all like the just negativity and?
Yes, and being the only black professional educator that was full-time at the high school for several years, that was very isolating, because there's nobody who, and I didn't even realize really how isolating it was until we got a new school social worker who was a black woman, Ashley Smith, and she is fantastic and amazing and loves the babies. But in meetings or something, I'd be like, thinking something, and I look at her, and she knew, like, you know how black folks just get
Yeah,
it. And
yeah.
I was like, oh my God, I feel so relieved that I have someone here who gets it, who understands me. But all those years before she got there was other black folks, don't get me wrong, but as we say, skin folk and kin folk all the time. And
Yeah.
oftentimes black folks were just looking out for
And,
themselves
and
and not the babies.
I'll tell you one thing: every black person, every how can I say it, every black man ain't a brother.
Yes,
Every black woman ain't a sister.
there you go.
So
I'll say how we said it when I pledged. Um, every every sister's not a sister. I hope you know that's true. So watch out for the other sister, because the other sister might be you.
okay. And you pledge what?
Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority
Uh oh.
Incorporated.
AKA.
Kiwi.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
So you had went through, I guess, discrimination, unfairness, them unfairly judging you at Penn Hills, assuming you were doing this, assuming you were doing that, and you had even mentioned something to me about like they were getting on you about your tats and stuff like that.
Yeah, the two white women,
Mm.
um, one of whom was fired and one of whom was moved around a lot, and she had other issues, which I won't, get into, but inappropriate behavior. Yeah, I bent down. I guess I bent down. Like I had like a dress shirt on or something, and my tattoo on my left breast, because they wrote that in the little paper. Her tattoo on her left breast was
On the paper.
exposed. In the write up that they were doing on me.
Oh, I want to say,
And I was
hold on.
like, you bend down and something. It wasn't like my breast was out. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It was like you could see my tattoo, maybe a little bit side of it. And if you could see my tattoo, so the fuck what? I mean, what's the problem?
But I'm thinking like, what, like, what were they doing this for? Was it jealousy? Was it
I mean,
like,
I can't really read their minds or speak to those things, but I'm gonna say yes, that.
hmm
And other people in my life have said, people are jealous of you, and I, for the life of me, cannot figure out why. I don't come in nobody's space to try to harm or hurt or disrespect. All I want is to help people and to help people be in a better space
right?
than they were before they came in contact with me.
I like that. So going through all that, that can just really just weigh on a person and just be overwhelming and can really like. I'm not saying that's the reason that led you to quitting, but with all those negative experiences, well, all the negativity you experienced there, did it have an effect on your mental?
It did. It
Okay.
did. Well, I want to say also that there was a balance, because I found love and kindness, whew, and support in the people of Penn Hills. They loved on me. Um, they supported. They called me and left me messages of encouragement. They sent me emails. They brought me food. Um, they sent me gifts and cards, and showed love and respect. My kids this last year, my babies, the class of 2023, the last class I had, they would beat your ass if you talk crazy to me. And I
Yeah.
really didn't even have that problem, because I approached people respectfully, understanding that they're human beings and not like, oh, they're just kids. They are young people, but they're human, and they deserve respect. And
Mm.
that's the way I approached the relationships, and I think that's why. But I was also told by a young new principal who had been in education. She had been alive fewer years than I had been doing my job. Told me that I enabled students because I stood up for students, because I was an advocate for students, and that was, as I saw it, my position. I would definitely help teachers out if something wasn't working in a class, and a student needed to be moved or whatever. But we had a union. The teachers,
hmm
the teachers have advocate. I was a student advocate, and that's the core of who I saw myself being in that space.
Do you
Um,
think that they may have felt the? I'm so sorry to hear that you went through all that, and
Thank
that
you.
it had an effect on your mental. And I feel like I just commend you for being so strong and just keep pushing through, and just realizing that you were there for the kids and the students and not them. And most people probably wouldn't even have been able to probably get through 1 year dealing with all that. And but Do you think they had an issue with like the students feeling so comfortable with you and just feeling like this is a mentor, this is like someone who can give me guidance, and felt some sort of way like, hey, why do they keep going to her? So they felt like when I guess the hate don't work, well, they gotta start lying about something. Okay, maybe she's doing this, maybe she's doing that. So they're trying to come up with something just to get you in trouble because they don't like how the students are gravitating towards you. Do you feel like that's what it might have been?
I mean, for some it could have been. Um, and I'm gonna just say, in order to save my own self and be good mentally, I had to realize that I cannot worry about what those other people are doing or saying or what motivates them. What I can do is focus on serving my students and their families, and just kind of going on and being great for me. And there was a lot of people was like, you shouldn't go back and get your PhD, or why are you getting a doctorate, and you're not going to get paid anymore, and blah blah blah, and just real. But I was elevating myself, and I'm proud of that. And I not
I'm
only
proud of you too.
thank you. I not only because I think it's like when I got my master's degree, my mom, she was still alive at the time, and she said, "Girl, I didn't even think you was going to graduate from high school." So to be able to go on and elevate to that level of the highest academic degree, coming from a single mom from Wilkinsburg, where people didn't even think I was going to graduate from high school, uh, I not only, when I was working on that, and it took me a long time, I thought of my daughters and how I wanted them to be proud of me, but I also thought of all my students, and to be able to show them that no matter where you come from, that you can achieve what you set your mind to. And I wanted to be that example for them because, well, for a lot of reasons, but they loved on me. They trusted in me. They were, and I don't know why, because they could have not. They could have been like, I ain't telling her shit. I'm not, she's my school counselor. She gets paid to do this and that. But somehow a lot of them connected, not all, but a lot of them connected with me. And I wanted them to see somebody they could be proud of and understand. I remember one of my students like, man, I saw you, and I was like, oh, there's a black woman with an office. And so, she was like, I want to have an office whenever whatever job I have, I'm going to have an office like Dr. Alexander has. And it's the simplest things. It's the simplest things that you don't even realize that they see in you or see you doing. Mm-hmm. That spurs them on to maybe take a harder class, an upper level class, an AP class, or to finish out this class, or to stay in school. It's just years, and I, honest to God, I couldn't have been who I am today, the part of me that I'm proud of, without having been in Penn Hills, because of the people, not because of the administration. Colleagues got on board later on. I mean, they didn't understand or see or whatever think I was who I am until they got to know me. And at the end, I'm pretty sure they all had a great level of respect for me too. And a lot of white men came to me and said, man, you leaving on your own terms. You're leaving when you want to. You walking out here with your head held high. Yep. And you did that shit, and you did it like at 54 years old, when we all got to work. We're like 60.
You did that,
64,
girl.
Right.
You go,
right.
Girl.
Yes.
So I love that story. Amazing story, and how you went there and, started off great, but then you had so much just negativity your way, but you didn't give up, and you left on your own terms, got your PhD. And to me, that's a great road to redemption. And how do you feel like, because you are on the road to redemption, you have redeemed yourself, and not to say that you had to come up from anywhere, but dealing with all that negativity, it's easy to give up, but you didn't. So how has the road to redemption been?
It's been beautiful.
It's been beautiful. That's good.
I have loved it. I've hated it, and I have loved it.
Yeah.
And I forget the name of the book, but my story is in a book that came out from a gentleman who had graduated from Penn Hills, and it's about like the kind of demise of suburban schools and et cetera. But they didn't put my name in because at the time, they didn't want to expose me to more
Yeah.
of the kind of issues that I was having with administration, etc.
Or
So
lies.
yes,
Mm-hmm.
that part right there. But it's been amazing because I have young women who I taught years ago who, um, like say for instance, I didn't even know. They'll tell me I didn't even know nothing about Women's History Month until you came along. And
Yeah.
again, remember I taught eighth grade U.S.
Yeah.
history, so um, I have young women saying you like showed me by example what I wanted to be and how I could be and what was possible, and I love that. And there's young men too, obviously, who I've helped. And I said I haven't I don't have any sons, but I
Mm.
have hundreds of sons,
Yeah.
Um, and what the thing is that they gave me more than I gave them.
You gonna make me tear up, girl. Don't do that.
They gave me more than I could ever give them. They made me. And I mentioned Penn Hill's families and stuff in my dissertation. They're part of what motivated me and what made me want to be better.
And look at you now. You're revered. Like I said, you got your PhD, the highest level of education, and I love what you're doing. And
Thank you.
I think you're a phenomenal woman. And what are like any of your future plans or things you got coming up, or things you maybe working on right now?
Well, I do have my company, which is Legacy, and it's spelled Leg capital A C Y because I'm AA,
Oh, okay.
and that actually that AA was thought of by one of my former students, a student I had the first year, who's also now a very good friend, LaShawn Renee Murray.
Okay.
So she gave me that idea, and so for my company, I'm a consultant, and I work with schools, nonprofits, businesses, and talking about trauma engaged interventions and existence, just like being human. It's the very simple things that we think are, I mean, it's not like brain surgery, even though I've done a lot of research and I have the research to back up what I think and what I say. It's treating people with humanity. Like the other night, I was with some young ladies at IUP,
Hmm.
the Collegiate Women in Progress group, and there was a young lady, Erica Jackson, who had um, I had spoken at the Gateway Senior High School Black Student Union, and she was the president. She invited me to speak, and
High school's got student union. I mean,
oh
you said
yeah,
black student
oh
unions.
yeah, yeah. We had one at
Oh,
Penn Hills,
oh,
which
okay.
of course I was the faculty advisor for free, and that's the thing. Like people start getting paid, they start paying for that position, but I was doing it for free. I was staying after school for the GSA, the Gay Straight Alliance, years and years ago, and wasn't getting like a stipend or anything for that. It was for my students. It was so that they could have a place to be and express themselves. But yeah, Erica, and I said, she invited me, and I went to speak to that group, and it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And I said, thank you for thinking about me and remembering me. She said, I have not. She said, I've been thinking about you ever since I met you when I
Mm.
was in high school, and you did, you came and talked to our BSU, and
See the impact you having, the
yes,
influence.
and oftentimes I'll be boohooing like by myself, like I haven't done anything. What have I done? I haven't made a major impact, but you know what? I have, and I want to move in that energy for myself, and it's not being cocky or conceited. It's just saying I know my power, and it's unfortunate that like at 55, I am just now understanding that and not feeling like, oh, I shouldn't say this and I shouldn't do that because I don't want to seem conceited, or I don't want to seem like
Talk your
I
shit,
think I'm
girl.
better than anybody else. But fuck it, I am better than a lot of other people, and I know a lot of other people could not have handled what I handled in my space, and I did it with a lot of help. Black moms, you know, my students' moms, they would come in and give me encouragement, bring me food, like I said, um, just say you're gonna be all right, you're gonna be okay. And so I couldn't have done it by myself, but I did do that shit.
You did that shit, girl.
Amen.
So talk your shit, pop your shit, and you know your worth. And hey, don't let nobody hold you back, hold you down. And look at you. Look what you've been doing.
I'm trying.
PhD and all.
Thank
Influence.
you.
You should put. You said you're an advocate, activist. You should put influencer. Motivator.
I might try to do that.
Motivator and
Dick the Great, rest in peace, ancestor Dick Gregory. He was a comedian and then an activist, right?
Yeah.
And he said he called himself the agitator. Like, remember them old washers that had the thing in the middle?
Yeah.
And so the agitator stirs shit up, and it makes people aware of what the problems are and where the dirt is. And we're talking about comparing it to a washing machine, right?
Yeah.
So I'm an agitator. We'll add that to that.
I like a positive
That's it.
agitator.
That's it. Agitator to make people see what the hell is going on.
They might be legally
And
blind.
that's why I wasn't liked, I guess, because again, I'm not going to sit down and shut up. And I'm never going to let a child be hurt in my presence. And I'm not going to not stand up for children who are in a lot of ways defenseless and don't have somebody to stand up for them.
That's that. I like that.
Thank you.
I like that. I do want to just thank you so much for coming through the Straight Facts podcast, the best podcast out, and because I've been seeing what you've been doing for so long, and I was like, man, I feel like she got a story to tell. I definitely appreciate you for coming through. Hopefully we can get you back on sometime soon. You might be selling wigs one day,
You never know.
Selling bundles or something. We can get you back on. And we out. Like, comment, and subscribe. Straight Facts.